Welcome back to Spirits in the Shadow. What you're about to hear is more than just an urban legend. This tale, pieced together from creepy online accounts claiming to be based on real events in Japan's remote Shimane prefecture, revolves around an evil object, kotoribako, or child catcher box. The ornate box is rumoured to be crafted using a creepy, forgotten technique that required the dismemberment of children to complete. Why would anyone create such a horror? We'll explore the terrifying origins of the curse in this series. Subscribe so you don't miss out. Kaito considered himself an entirely ordinary young man. His life wasn't the plot of a best-selling novel or a blockbuster film. It was a quiet collection of simple routines and familiar comforts. He worked a standard 9-to-5 office job, spent his evenings unwinding with video games and horror manga, and cherished the simple purpose of connecting with the people who mattered most. Tonight was one of those cherished moments. A simple get-together with friends, a small island of warmth and laughter in the vast sea of the mundane. His apartment, a cozy and unremarkable space in the heart of the city, was filled with the comforting aroma of takeout food and the low hum of a gaming console booting up. It was a normal, relatable environment, a scene playing out in countless homes on any given Friday night. His guests were the cornerstones of his small world. There was Kenji, his best friend since high school, a steady and reliable presence who happened to be the descendant of a family that traditionally cared for a local Shinto shrine. With him was Yumi, Kenji's girlfriend, whose sharp wit was the perfect counterpoint to Kenji's quiet nature. And then there was Aiko, a newer friend they had all met through a mutual acquaintance. She was gentle and quick to smile, fitting into their little group with an easy grace. The purpose of the evening was nothing grander than to share food, drinks, and a few rounds of their favourite fighting game. It was a scene so normal it could have been anyone's, making the thought that anything could go wrong feel utterly alien. They were in the middle of a particularly intense match, with laughter and playful jeers filling the air, when Aiko's phone rang. She excused herself, her voice a low murmur in a corner of the room. When she returned, her usual bright smile was tinged with an odd, a conspiratorial excitement. "Hey Kaito," she began, her eyes gleaming. "You're going to love this. I was helping clear out my grandfather's old house today, and I found the strangest little wooden box hidden away in the attic. You're into all that weird, creepy stuff, right? I figured I'd bring it over for you to see." The light-hearted atmosphere in the room didn't just fade, it shattered. In an instant, Kenji went fully still. The colour drained from his face, leaving behind a pale, waxy mask of pure dread. His knuckles were white where he gripped the controller, and a violent tremor ran through his hands, causing the plastic to clatter to the floor. "No," he whispered, his voice hoarse and barely audible. "Aiko, no, not that, not tonight." He looked wildly around the room, a frantic edge to his gaze. "My father, he is not home. As his words hung in the air, a profound and unnatural chill seeped into the apartment. It was a cold that had nothing to do with the autumn weather outside. It was a deep, penetrating cold that felt like a door had been opened to a place where warmth could not exist. The laughter was gone, replaced by a suffocating silence. It felt as though someone else had just walked into the room, a guest no one could see, and the simple night with friends was no longer simple at all. The box sat on the polished wood of the dining table, an object of stark and unsettling simplicity. It was small, no more than 20 centimetres in length, crafted from a plain, rough wood that seemed to drink the light, leaving no reflection on its coarse surface. There were no hinges to suggest an opening, no visible seams to betray its construction, no lock to be picked. It was a perfect solid block, a geometric anomaly that felt too precise, too intentional to be a product of nature. This flawless yet unnatural quality was the first dissonant note. a small, unsettling detail that snagged at the edge of Kaito's perception. He rationalized it as the work of a skilled, if eccentric craftsman, a modern artist playing with form and expectation. The audience, however, feels the first prickle of unease. This is not just skilled craftsmanship. It's a subtle violation of the natural order, a quiet announcement that the rules of the ordinary world no longer apply. This object is not what it seems, and its very perfection is a carefully constructed mask. Aiko placed the box on the table, a casual offering that felt strangely momentous. As Kaito's curiosity outweighed his initial hesitation, he reached out and lifted it. The wood was unexpectedly dense, heavier than it should have been. It was then he heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping from within. It was a delicate, muffled sound, almost imperceptible, like a trapped insect or a tiny, living heart beating against its wooden prison. He dismissed it almost immediately. An acoustic trick, he murmured, more to himself than to Yumi or Kenji. The way the wood is carved, it must create a resonance, an echo of my own pulse. He wanted to believe the simple, scientific explanation, to file the experience away under the heading of a clever illusion. But the audience knows better. That faint, rhythmic beat is not an echo. It is a signal, a desperate plea, or a very patient, waiting pulse. It is the first true warning, a clear sign that this is no inert object, but a cage. The rationalization is a defense mechanism, a willful ignorance that only serves to heighten the impending sense of dread. The fragile illusion of normalcy was shattered not by a sound, but by a scream. Kenji, who had been staring at the box with a growing, ashen horror, suddenly lurched back from the table. "Don't touch it!" he shrieked, his voice a raw, ragged sound of pure terror. "Put it down now!" His words were a physical blow, and Kaito, startled, nearly dropped the box. Kenji's face was a mask of utter revulsion and fear, his eyes fixed on the small wooden object as if it were a venomous serpent poised to strike. He staggered backward, a hand clamped over his mouth, before doubling over and vomiting violently onto the floor. Without another word, he scrambled away, his movements clumsy with panic, and barricaded himself in the bathroom. The sound of his retching was a brutal, visceral punctuation to the sudden, suffocating silence. Kaito and Yumi were left in stunned silence, the echo of Kenji's scream still hanging in the air. A wooden box. How could a simple wooden box provoke such an extreme primal reaction? They were paralyzed by a profound sense of cognitive dissonance. The object before them was small, plain, and inanimate. Kenji's terror was immense, visceral, and undeniable. The two realities could not coexist. "He must be sick," Yumi whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "A sudden fever, maybe." Kaito nodded, but his eyes were drawn back to the box he now held. The faint tapping he had dismissed as a trick of acoustics now felt like a sinister secret whispered directly to him. Kenji's reaction was not just a warning, it was a violent, desperate testament to the box's true nature. The audience understands what the characters cannot yet grasp. Kenji has not reacted to what the box is, but to what it represents, what it contains, and what it is capable of. His horror is a glimpse into the abyss they are casually approaching, and their inability to comprehend it is the final, tragic step towards their own undoing. The quiet unease that had settled over the old shrine after Kenji's ritual began to fester, growing into a palpable dread that clung to the air like a damp shroud. It started subtly. A faint, cloying scent of iron, reminiscent of the blood from Kenji's self-inflicted wound, would drift through the rooms at odd hours, thick and suffocating, only to vanish before anyone else could notice. Taro would mention it, a wrinkle in his brow, but the others would just shake their heads, attributing it to the old wood or the incense from the altar. Then came the whispers, faint and sibilant, like dry leaves skittering across stone. They would slither into Taro's ears in the dead of night, formless and menacing, causing him to jolt awake, his heart hammering against his ribs. But the room would be silent, the others fast asleep, oblivious to the chilling murmurs that had just echoed in the darkness. The intensity of the phenomena began to escalate, shedding its subtlety for a more overt and malevolent nature. The flickering lights, once a minor annoyance, now plunged entire rooms into sudden, disorienting darkness, accompanied by a sharp drop in temperature that left goosebumps in its wake. Doors which had been securely latched would be found wide open, creaking ominously on their old hinges. One evening, as they gathered for a meagre meal, the ornate wooden box on the altar, the one Kenji had performed the ritual over, began to vibrate violently. A low, guttural hum emanated from it, a sound that resonated deep in Taro's bones. He stared, horrified, but as soon as he cried out, the vibration ceased. The others glanced over, seeing nothing but a dusty old box. Miki laughed it off as his nerves, while Daiki, ever the pragmatist, suggested it was just a tremor from a passing truck. Taro's growing panic was met with a wall of skepticism. His desperate attempts to make the others see the escalating danger were dismissed as stress-induced paranoia. "You are just tired, Taro," Miki would say, her voice laced with a gentle, patronizing concern. "We're all on edge." Daiki would offer logical, almost dismissive, explanations for every strange occurrence, making Taro feel as though he were losing his grip on reality. He was alone in his terror, a solitary witness to a creeping horror that no one else could, or would, acknowledge. The more he insisted, the more they pulled away, their expressions shifting from concern to annoyance. This isolation was a new kind of fear, a chilling realization that when the true darkness finally revealed itself, he would have to face it alone. The shrine was no longer just a place of eerie silence. It had become his own private, terrifying stage, and the unseen entity was toying with its sole audience member before the final horrifying act. The air in the abandoned hospital wing didn't just turn cold, it became a solid, suffocating weight. The last battery-powered lantern flickered once, twice, and died, plunging them into absolute darkness. For a brief moment, the only sound was their own frantic breathing. Then, a noise began to echo from the end of the hall, a wet, dragging sound, like a heavy sack of meat being pulled across broken glass. It was accompanied by a low, guttural clicking that vibrated through the floor and into their bones. The thing that emerged from the shadows was a violation of nature. It was not a spectre or a phantom. It was a mass of writhing, knotted limbs fused together in a mockery of the human form. Its skin was the colour of old bruises, stretched tight over bones that jutted out at impossible angles. Where a head should have been, there was only a gaping maw filled with splintered, needle-like teeth, a wail of pure agony and hatred pouring from it, a sound that felt like it was tearing their minds apart. 2 pinpricks of crimson light burned deep within its shifting form, locking onto them with an ancient predatory intelligence. Taro screamed and threw a blessed salt packet, which dissolved into smoke a foot before it even touched the creature. The entity lunged forward with blinding speed. It didn't run, it flowed across the floor like spilled ink. One of its elongated, razor-sharp limbs shot out and slammed into Taro, throwing him against the far wall with a sickening crunch. He collapsed, unmoving. Frozen in terror, Kenji could only watch. All his training, all the stories of his grandfather's strength, evaporated into a cold sweat that drenched his body. This was not a lost soul. It was a primal force of destruction. He raised his family's sacred dagger, its silver glinting in the faint moonlight from a grimy window, but his hands trembled violently. The the creature turned its full attention to him. The crimson eyes burned into his soul, promising a pain beyond comprehension. He saw his own death reflected in that terrible gaze. He was powerless, a child facing a tidal wave of pure malice, and he knew he was not strong enough. He was going to die here. What did you think of the ghost's reveal? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter. The whiskey glass slipped from Kaito's numb fingers, shattering on the sticky floor of the bar. The sharp sound barely registered over the roaring in his ears. Fingers, organs, children. Kenji's words weren't just a confession, they were a curse, spoken aloud and now branded onto Kaito's soul. He looked at his friend, at the man whose family were gatekeepers to such unspeakable things, and saw a stranger. The low golden light of the bar felt like the glow of a furnace, and the air was thick with smoke and secrets he couldn't breathe. Without a word, he pushed himself away from the table, his chair scraping violently against the wood. He had to get out. Not just out of the bar, but out of the city, away from every street corner that held a memory of Aiko, away from the shadow of the families who guarded damnation in a simple wooden box. He fled that night with nothing but the clothes on his back and a wallet thin with cash. The bus ride was a blur of dark highways and rain-streaked windows. Every jolt of the road was a tremor of fear. He could not sleep. When he closed his eyes, he saw a small, ornate box, its lid slightly ajar. He saw tiny, pale fingers intertwined with dried umbilical cords. The horror was a physical weight, a sickness that coiled in his gut. He'd stare at his own hands, half expecting to see them stained with something ancient and vile. He started avoiding playgrounds, the laughter of children sending a spike of ice through his veins. Every package left on a doorstep, every small wrapped gift became an object of profound terror. The knowledge Kenji had given him was a wound that would not close, a mental scar that festered, twisting his perception of the world into a landscape of hidden horrors. Months later, Kaito found himself in a nameless apartment in a city where no one knew his past. He worked a menial job, stocking shelves in the dead of night, seeking the quiet anonymity of the graveyard shift. He was alive, but he wasn't living. He was a collection of frayed nerves and haunted memories, starting at every unexpected noise. He had escaped the town, escaped Kenji, but he had not escaped the truth of the kotoribako. It lived inside him now. He had survived the night Aiko brought that box into their lives, and he had survived the confession that ripped his reality apart. But it was a hollow victory. Some nights he would wake up in a cold sweat, the phantom smell of old wood and decay in his nostrils, and he knew with chilling certainty that he hadn't truly escaped at all. He was just waiting for the curse to find him again. The loose floorboard groaned as Sora pried it open, revealing a small dark cavity. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. He gently opened it, the faint spidery script telling a story over a century old, a story of a place the writer called simply Village A. The journal, written by the village elder, began with pain. "We are the forgotten," the first entry read. "We live at the edge of the world, a village of outcasts. For years, we endured the lash of the mandarin's whip, the theft of our harvests, the scorn in the eyes of his men. We were less than human to them, and our prayers to the gods fell on deaf ears. Despair was our daily bread. Then, everything changed. A deserter soldier, a man with eyes like chips of flint named Jin, stumbled into their village. He saw their suffering and did not offer pity. He offered power. He taught them to channel their pain, to forge their collective misery into a weapon of pure hatred. He called it the Box of Sorrows. The ritual was a blasphemy, the elder wrote, his handwriting growing shaky. The wood had to be cut in secret, under a new moon. We poured the blood of female animals into its grain, a perversion of life. But the final ingredient, the true source of its power, was the innocence we were forced to discard. Jin told us the hatred of an adult is a fire, but the pain of a child is an ocean. We offered the parts of our children, tiny fingers, knots of umbilical cord, pieces of what was inside them. With each sacrifice, the dark wood of the box seemed to breathe, growing colder, stronger. The wails of our children were silenced, but we knew their spirits were now bound to the wood and thirsty for revenge. One night, they sent their creation, a small, unassuming box, to the home of the oppressive Mandarin. The following morning, a silence hung over the official's estate. When the doors were finally broken down, the entire family was found dead. They were not wounded, but blood, thick and black, had poured from their eyes, their mouths, and their noses, staining their silken beds. Sora closed the journal, his hands trembling. It all made sense now. The recent string of inexplicable deaths in the region, each victim discovered in the same horrifying state, bleeding from every orifice. He remembered the ornate wooden box he'd glimpsed on a table at the first victim's home, a box he had dismissed as a simple antique. He recalled the local legends, the whispers of weeping children heard in the woods after dark. It wasn't a ghost they were hunting. It was a curse, a man-made demon born from absolute despair, and it was still hungry. So what do you think? Is the kotoribako just a terrifying legend cooked up for the digital age? Or could a physical object, saturated with so much historical hatred, truly exist and be waiting in the shadows? The horror of the kotoribako isn't just about a cursed box. It's deeply rooted in the real-world suffering of Japan's historical outcasts, the communities once known as Ita or Hinin. Deemed unclean and pushed to the absolute margins of society, their pain and resentment were believed to have a power of their own. From this profound dehumanization, the legend of the box was born, a tangible symbol of what happens when human souls are trampled upon. It serves as a chilling reminder that the most enduring horrors often don't come from ghosts or demons, but from the cruelty we inflict upon one another. The curse is a reflection of ourselves. What are your theories on the box and its origins? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story we unearth from the darkness.